I was 14 that Halloween, at that weird in-between age where I didn't want to admit I still loved trick-or-treating, but I wasn't quite old enough to stay home and throw a party. So I tagged along with my best friend Eric, his cousin Naomi, and our neighbor Zach. Our parents let us go into town for the first time, and it felt like freedom. The town square looked incredible. Shop windows layered in cobwebs, glowing jack-o'-lanterns lining the sidewalks, a guy on stilts dressed like a skeleton clacking through the crowd. Kids screamed and laughed as performers handed out candy and posed for photos. And that's when I saw him. He wasn't flashy like the others, no juggling or balancing on stilts, just standing. He was tall, easily over 6.5 feet, with a long black coat brushing the ground. His mask was plain white, perfectly smooth except for 2 black circles where eyes should have been. The weirdest thing was how still he was, arms folded neatly in front of him, head angled just slightly down. No fidgeting, no shifting his weight, just still. Kids approached him, giggling nervously. When a little girl in a princess dress waved, he tilted his head slowly to one side, then reached into his coat pocket and handed her a single wrapped candy. She squealed with delight and ran back to her parents. Everyone nearby laughed and clapped. It was part of some creepy street act. But the performer didn't react. He didn't bow, didn't wave, just straightened again and waited. We dared Zach to go up, since he was the bravest. He swaggered over, trying to look cool, but when the man tilted his head at him, I swear Zach flinched. The man pulled out a lollipop and held it out. Zach hesitated, then snatched it, mumbling, "Thanks," before scurrying back. "Dude, his hand was freezing," he said, rubbing his fingers, "like holding ice." Naomi wrinkled her nose. "I don't like it, let's just go." So we did. We spent another hour hitting candy stops and laughing. And when we cut down a side street toward the neighborhoods, I happened to glance behind us, and my stomach dropped. The performer was there, not standing on a corner anymore, not handing out candy. Walking, slow, steady steps, always the same distance behind us. "Guys," I hissed, "don't make it obvious," but of course they all spun around. The tall figure stopped instantly, tilting his head like before, just standing, watching. Naomi clutched my arm. "Nope, I hate this, I hate this." We kept walking. So did he. At first we tried brushing it off. Maybe he was just leaving the square too. But every turn we made, he mirrored. If we sped up, so did he. Finally, Eric snapped. "What do you want?" he yelled across the street. The performer froze, slowly raised one gloved hand, palm open. There was nothing in it. That's when Eric swore under his breath. "Let's lose him." We ducked into a group of kids, letting them surround us. We walked faster, weaving through until he came out on the other side. I risked a glance back, and he was still there, on the far edge of the group, head tilted, following. We tried splitting up next. Naomi and I darted down a narrow alley between shops, while Eric and Zach went right. The alley was dark, our shoes slapping against wet pavement, the only light spilling from the street behind us. We waited, hiding in the shadows, hearts pounding. Minutes passed. Finally, we crept back out, thinking maybe we'd lost him. We hurried to meet the guys on the next block. But when we reached them, Eric's face was pale. He followed us. And sure enough, at the end of the block, the masked man stood under a street lamp, waiting. Panic was setting in now. We tried knocking on a random door, breathless, begging for help. An old woman answered, annoyed, thinking we were pranksters. By the time we convinced her to peek out the window, he was gone. But as we stumbled back onto the street, there he was again, closer this time. We didn't bother with plans after that. We just ran. Candy spilled from our bags, bouncing on the pavement, but none of us stopped. My lungs burned, stitches tore by my sides, but fear kept me moving. When we finally reached the street, gasping and bent over, I dared to look back. The sidewalk was empty. No tall figure, no mask, nothing but the quiet night. We tried to laugh it off later, convincing ourselves that he was just some creep who got his kicks scaring kids, but deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. Because when I emptied my candy bag later, at the very bottom, under all the snacks, was a single piece of candy that I didn't remember taking. A lollipop, wrapped in plain white paper. I was 11, the Halloween it happened. It was the first year my parents let me go trick-or-treating without them trailing behind. I begged, I swore I was old enough, and after weeks of pleading, they finally caved, though with strict rules. Stick with your friends, stay in the neighborhood, and only go to houses with the porch light on. Everyone knew that rule. Porch light off meant no candy. Porch light on meant fair game. There were 4 of us that night. Me, my best friend Daniel, his cousin Nick, and this kid Tyler who lived down the street. We weren't all equally close, but on Halloween, alliances didn't matter. Only how much candy you could pile into your pillowcase. Daniel was a ninja. Black hoodie, plastic sword sticking out the back of his sweatshirt. Nick wore a cheap Batman suit that sagged in the knees, and Tyler had one of those rubbery werewolf masks from the drugstore. I was a pirate. Plastic, striped shirt, and a hat that wouldn't stay on. The night had the perfect Halloween chill. The air sharp enough to sting your nose when you breathed in. Leaves across the pavement in little bursts of wind, and the smell of pumpkin guts, wet leaves, and faint smoke hung everywhere. Every block was alive with kids darting from house to house, parents chatting at the end of driveways, porch lights glowing like beacons. It was safe, ordinary, until we came to the brown house at the end of Birch Street. It looked normal enough. Plain, no decorations at all. Not even a pumpkin. But the porch light was on, glowing a dull yellow against the siding. That was the rule. Light on, candy inside. We trooped up the walkway, bags rustling, sneakers crunching over the gravel. Nick rang the doorbell. At first silence, then slow, heavy footsteps inside. The door creaked open. The man standing there wasn't in costume. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, with thinning hair and pale, almost ghostly face. He wore a stretched-out t-shirt with stains across the front and gray sweatpants. He wasn't smiling, not at first. We all blurted, "Trick or treat," in a messy chorus. The man looked at us. His eyes moved from one to the next, lingering too long, like he was sizing us up. Then finally he smiled. It was thin and wrong, a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "You boys want something better than candy?" he asked. His voice was rough, deep, like he'd been yelling or smoking for years. "I got a special treat inside, come on in." None of us moved. He stepped back, swinging the door open wider. Inside, the house was dim, the hallway cluttered with stacks of newspapers and boxes. Shadows stretched long across the floor, and the smell hit me. Stale smoke, mildew, and something sour underneath like spoiled milk. Daniel gave me a look, then muttered, we should probably go." We turned, starting to back off the porch, but the man leaned against the doorframe, one hand gripping it so tight his knuckles went white. He angled himself, just enough to block the doorway. "Don't be shy," he said, his voice almost sing-song now. "I don't get many visitors. Just a minute, that's all. You'll like it." Something crawled up my spine. My candy bag suddenly felt heavy in my hand, and I wanted to drop it and run, but my legs wouldn't move. Nick forced a laugh, trying to act casual. "Nah, it's cool, man. We got a lot more houses to hit." The man's smile twitched. He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. "Come on," he said again, sharper now. "You came to my door, didn't you? Be polite." The way he said that word, polite, made my stomach knot. His tone had shifted. It wasn't a request anymore. Tyler tugged at my sleeve. His werewolf mask was pushed up on his head now, his face pale, eyes wide. "Let's go," he whispered. His voice cracked. We all shuffled a step back. The wooden porch groaned under our sneakers. The man's hand slid down the frame, gripping the knob again. His whole posture changed. He wasn't smiling anymore. His lips pressed into a thin line, his eyes sharp. "Where you going?" he asked, low and hard. "I said come in." Every nerve in my body screamed run. My heart hammered so loud, I could hear it in my ears. Daniel's face was white. Nick's mouth hung open, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Then Nick muttered, barely audible, "Run!" And we did. We exploded off that porch in a blur. Candy bags thudding against our leg, plastic swords and masks clattering against the ground. We barreled down the walkway, sneakers slapping, pavement, breath tearing out of our throats. Behind us, I swear I heard the man hiss something, too quick to catch. Like a promise, I didn't look back. We didn't stop until we were 2 streets over, bent double, hands on our knees, gasping for breath. My lungs burned, my legs shook, my throat was raw. No one spoke for a long minute. We just stared at each other wide-eyed, our costumes half falling apart, our bags still clutched like lifelines. Finally, Daniel croaked, "We're not telling anyone." We all nodded, too shaken, too embarrassed, too scared we wouldn't believed, so we kept quiet. But here's the thing. Every Halloween after that, I noticed the brown house. No decorations, same sagging steps, and the porch light was always on. Always. And sometimes, walking past it, I thought I saw the curtain shift, like someone was standing just behind it, waiting for kids to make the same mistake we did. I was 13 the year it happened, and it was the last time I ever went trick-or-treating. By then, I already felt a little old for it, but it was the only night of the year where you could wander the neighborhood in costume and people didn't look at you funny. My best friends, Ethan and Marcus, talked me into going, swearing this would be our biggest haul yet. We promised ourselves it would be the last time. The night was perfect for it, cold enough that you could see your breath, leaves skittering across the pavement, porch lights glowing in long rows, kids in costumes darted across lawns, parents lingered at the ends of driveways with cups of coffee, and the whole neighborhood buzzed with that Halloween energy you can't really describe. Safe chaos. That's why I noticed him right away. The man in the mask. The first time I saw him, we were leaving the McCarthy's house. Ethan had showed 2 full-sized candy bars in his pillowcase and was bragging about it. When I looked back toward the sidewalk, I noticed a tall figure standing under a street lamp. He wore a plain gray hoodie, jeans, and a white mask. No candy bag, no kids, no parents. Just standing there. At first I thought he might be someone's older brother trying to scare kids. But when we walked down the block to the next house, I saw him again. Across the street this time, standing, still facing us. "Yo," I said, nudging Marcus. "You see that guy?" Marcus squinted. "What guy?" "The one in the mask, right there." Ethan laughed. Probably some high schooler messing around and ignore him. So I tried. But as the night went on, I kept spotting him. At first, always at a distance, standing by a tree, leaning against a telephone pole, just close enough that I could see the mask, but too far to make out the details. Every time we moved to another house, so did he. By the 8th or 9th house, I couldn't shake it anymore. "He's following us," I whispered to Ethan. "Dude, you're paranoid," he said, but even he started glancing over his shoulder. At the Jenkins house, we were digging candy from the bowl they'd left out. I looked up and froze. The man was standing at the end of the driveway, just standing there, head tilted slightly, like he was studying us. "Okay, that's not funny," Marcus muttered, backing up. "Maybe it's a parent," Ethan said, but his voice cracked. "Making sure nobody takes too much candy?" The man didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even hold a bag, just watched. We decided to keep moving, but faster now. We cut across lawns, skipped houses, zigzagged through streets. No matter what we did, he was always there. Sometimes ahead of us, sometimes behind, sometimes across the street, always keeping pace, always watching. At one point, I thought maybe we'd lost him. We ran 3 blocks, weaving between crowds of trick-or-treaters, finally slowing down outside a house with inflatable ghosts on the lawn. I was bent over, hands on my knees, gasping for air. When I looked up, he was standing across the street, closer than ever. That was the first time I realized how tall he was, easily over 6 feet, his shoulders broad under the hoodie. The white mask was expressionless, blank features staring at us in the dark. "Okay," Ethan whispered, his bravado gone. "What do we do now?" Marcus grabbed my arm. "Let's just go home. Now." The walk back was the longest of my life. Every streetlight, every shadow, I expected him to step closer. We didn't talk, didn't laugh, didn't even run. We just walked fast, heads down, trying not to draw attention. But I could feel his eyes on us. Always. By the time we reached my street, the kids and parents had thinned out. Porch lights flickered off one by one. The night felt emptier, quieter. We were almost at the house when I dared to glance back. He was standing at the corner, perfectly still, watching. For a second, I thought he might come closer, step into the streetlight, but he didn't. He just stood there, head tilted, until we slipped inside the front door and locked it tight. The next morning, I walked past the corner on my way to school. I half expected to see him still there, but there was nothing. No sign he'd ever been there at all. The weirdest part? Nobody else saw him. Not the parents, not the younger kids, nobody. Just us. I never went trick-or-treating again. But sometimes, even now, when I walk alone at night, I catch myself glancing over my shoulder, looking for that same figure in the mask, because he wasn't out there for candy. He was out there for us. I was 12 when it happened. The last year I ever went trick-or-treating. It was me, my friend Drake, his little brother Matthew, and our neighbor Sophie. We'd been best friends since elementary school, and Halloween was our night. We planned our route weeks in advance, comparing which streets gave out full-size candy bars, which ones gave the good stuff, and which ones were a waste of time. That night, the neighborhood was packed. Kids everywhere, superheroes, witches, zombies, sprinting across lawns, parents herding toddlers, porch lights glowing in neat rows. The air smelled like wet leaves, pumpkin candles, and cold autumn air. The sound of laughter and footsteps filled the street, so loud it was almost like a festival. It felt safe, completely safe, until Matthew disappeared. It happened on Pinewood Drive, maybe halfway through the night. We just finished one side of the block and crossed to the other. Matthew, only 9 and desperate to keep up with the older kids, kept running ahead. He was dressed as a little vampire, cape dragging behind him, his pillowcase bouncing at his side. "Matt, wait up," Jake yelled, but Matthew just laughed and sprinted toward the next house. We watched him run up the walkway, cape flapping. The porch light was on, orange and steady. Nothing unusual. A couple of other kids were already leaving with candy in their bags. Then, gone. I mean it. 1 second he was on the porch, the next he wasn't. At first I thought he'd gone inside. Some people let you pick candy from a bowl in their entryway, but when we got there, 30 seconds later tops, the door was shut, porch empty, and on the lawn, just on the walkway, was Matthew's candy bag. I remember the way it looked. Pillowcase twisted, half the candy spilled out like it had been yanked out of his hand. "Matt?" Jake called, his voice cracking. He ran up the steps, rang the doorbell over and over, but no answer. Sophie grabbed my arm. "Where is he?" she whispered. We circled the yard, checked behind bushes, even yelled his name down the street. Nothing. The crowds of kids swirled around us, oblivious, like nothing had happened. I bent down and picked up the pillowcase. The candy was scattered in the grass. Fun-sized Snickers, Tootsie Rolls, a lollipop with its wrapper half torn. My stomach twisted. Matthew was 9. He wouldn't just drop his whole bag. He wouldn't walk away without it. Something was very wrong. Jake banged on the door again, harder this time. "Hey, my brother was just here. Did he come inside?" Still no answer. The curtains were drawn tight. The house looked dark behind them, except for the porch light burning steadily overhead. "Maybe he ran to the next house," Sophie said, but her voice didn't sound convinced. We checked. We searched 2 more houses down, asked the kids and parents milling around if they'd seen a little vampire run by. Nobody had. It was like he'd vanished. By now, Jake was frantic, yelling his brother's name into the street. People started staring, giving us confused looks, but no one seemed to have seen anything. I held on to the pillowcase, my hands shaking. The candy felt heavier than it should have. "Should we call somebody?" Sophie asked. Jake didn't answer, just kept yelling, running up and down the street, cape swinging behind him. We stayed on Pinewood until the crowds thinned. Porch lights flickered off one by one and the night grew quieter, but Matthew never came back. The police were called later. Flashlights swept the yards, voices echoed through the neighborhood, questions fired at us again and again. But they never found him. Not that night and not ever. The only thing left was the candy bag crumpled in my hands. I haven't gone trick-or-treating since. I can't. Every Halloween I see his little vampire cape in my head, flashing red under the porch light before he vanished. And the worst part? That house, the one where he disappeared, still puts its porch light on every year. And every year, kids run up the steps without thinking. Just like Matthew did. I was 12 the year it happened. Right at that awkward age where you're too old for costumes but still greedy enough for free candy. I promised my parents I'd stick with my friends Jamie and Chris, and we planned to hit as many houses as possible before curfew. It was one of those perfect Halloween nights. Cold, clear, the smell of damp leaves in the air, porch lights glowing all up and down the street. Costumes rustled past in every decoration. Pirates, princesses, zombies, kids shrieking and laughing as they sprinted from house to house. It was crowded and safe, or at least it felt safe. We'd been out for 2 hours before we finally headed back toward Jamie's place to dump our loot and trade like we always did. We cut through the park, plopped down at one of the old picnic tables under the streetlight, and dumped our bags out. The sound of candy pouring onto wood was one of the best sounds in the world. A colorful pile spread in front of me, all mixed together. I started sorting right away, stacking my favorites into neat little rows. That's when I noticed it. One of the wrappers looked wrong. At first it was just crumbled, but when I picked it up I saw the edges weren't sealed evenly. The logo looked blurry off-center, and inside wasn't peanut butter. It was just a lump of something pale. My stomach flipped. "Hey," I said, holding it up. "Does this look weird to you guys?" Jamie glanced over and shrugged. "Probably just a bad print. They mess up wrappers sometimes." But then I saw more. A lot of the candy wrappers had been completely tampered with. And when I started digging, I only confirmed my suspicion. "Dude," I said, my voice tight now. "These aren't factory mistakes. Someone messed with these." Chris frowned, picking through his own pile. His hand froze. "Mine too," he whispered. Jamie dumped his candy out again, pawing through it frantically. His voice wrote, "Wait, what? Who would do this?" That's when it hit us. We'd been together the whole night. None of us left our bags unattended. The only time we weren't holding them was when we set them down in the park to dump everything out, and the park was empty. There'd been a man there standing just outside the glow of the streetlight, not in costume, just watching. I hadn't thought anything of it at the time. Too many people were out that night. It didn't register. But now the image came back sharp and cold. The way he stood perfectly still, hands in his pockets, face shadowed. "Guys," I whispered, my throat dry. "What if he touched our bags?" No one spoke. We just stared at these piles of candy, suddenly less like treasure and more like bait. We never ate a single piece of it. Not that night and not ever. Our parents freaked when we showed them, and the police got involved, but nothing came of it. No fingerprints, no suspects, no leads. And the weirdest part? When they tested some of the candy, it wasn't poisoned, wasn't anything, just swapped. Like whoever did it wasn't trying to hurt us. They just let us know they could. Every Halloween since, I still go through my candy. Not because I want to eat it, but because I'm terrified I'll find another wrong wrapper. And sometimes I wonder how many other kids didn't even notice before unwrapping and eating. I'll never forget the night we found it. The street wasn't supposed to exist. It was Halloween and I was 13, going out with my two best friends, Mark and Olivia. We trick-or-treated together every year since we were little, but this was the first year our parents let us go without supervision. That made it feel like an adventure, like the night was ours. Our town always went all out for Halloween. Whole blocks lined with jack-o'-lanterns, orange lights draped across porches, scarecrows on lawns. By 8 o'clock, the streets were swarming with kids, bags heavy with candy. The air buzzed with laughter, shouts, and the constant crunch of leaves under sneakers. That's why we noticed it right away, how quiet that street was. We'd finished up on Maple Avenue and were looking for shortcuts when Olivia spotted it. "Hey, what about that block?" she said, pointing to a side street we didn't recognize. No sign, no name, just a narrow road lined with houses. Every porch light was on, glowing orange in the dark. More candy, we figured. When we turned down, the Halloween cut off. The laughter, the voices, the running footsteps, it all faded behind us, until it was just the three of us walking on cracked pavement, our sneakers echoing too loudly in the stillness. I remember glancing around, expecting to see kids darting house to house, but the sidewalks were empty, the lawns empty, not a single person in sight. "Where is everybody?" Mark asked, his voice too loud in the silence. None of us had an answer. The first house we stopped at had a big bowl of candy on the porch, plastic pumpkins smiling beside it. But the candy was untouched, perfectly piled like nobody had been there all night. Olivia hesitated, then reached in and grabbed a few fun-sized bars. Her hand shook as she stuffed them in her bag. "We were just lucky," she said, but her voice sounded thin, like she didn't believe it. We kept walking. Every house was the same. Bowls of candy, perfectly stacked, porches decorated, lights glowing, front doors cracked open just an inch, as if the families had stepped out mid-evening and forgotten to close them. But no voices inside, no footsteps, no sound at all. The street felt abandoned. Mark finally muttered, "This is messed up. Where is everyone?" We tried peeking through one of the open doors. The living room was lit, a TV buzzing static, a half-finished bowl of popcorn on the coffee table. Jackets hung on hooks by the door. It looked like the family had been home just minutes ago and then left all at once. Without turning off the lights, without closing the door, without touching the candy bowl on the porch, we backed away fast. The deeper we went, the worse it felt. The air was heavier, the quiet pressed in, thick and unnatural. At the very end of the block, I glanced back and my stomach dropped. The street we'd come from was gone. I mean, the houses were still there, but the way out was pitch black, like the light of Halloween had been snuffed out. No glow of pumpkins, no kids running past, just a wall of darkness at the end of the block. Olivia gasped. That wasn't like that before. We didn't even talk about it. We just ran, past the untouched candy bowls, past the half-open doors, bags thumping against our legs. When we hit the end of the street again, the noise of Halloween rushed back all at once. Kids laughing, parents calling, footsteps slapping pavement. The darkness was gone. The block behind us looked normal again. When we turned back to look, the strange street wasn't there anymore. Just a row of backyards and fences, like it had never existed. We never told anyone. Who would believe us? But every Halloween since, I find myself glancing down side streets, watching for porch lights that burn too steady, for candy bowls too full, for doors left just slightly open. And sometimes late at night, I dream about that block. I dream I go back, and this time, I'm not the one who gets out. I was 11 the Halloween it happened, still young enough to sprint across lawns without worrying about tripping over my costume, but old enough to know when something felt wrong. There were 4 of us that night, me, my cousin Daniel, and our friends, Emily and Sarah. We'd been walking the same neighborhood loop for years. It was one of those safe suburban places where parents let their kids roam, because every porch light was on, and every house was familiar. That's why the house stood out. It sat halfway down Birchwood Lane, tucked between 2 perfectly decorated houses. The ones on either side had pumpkins glowing, skeletons propped up on chairs, fake cobwebs dangling over the steps. But this house, it was just quiet. No decorations, no jack-o'-lanterns, just a porch light burning steady and bright, like a beacon saying, "Yes, we have candy." We hesitated on the sidewalk. "You think they're actually giving anything out?" Emily asked, hugging her pillowcase closer. "Lights on," Daniel shrugged. "That's the rule." So we went up. The porch creaked under our shoes. The air felt heavier here, colder somehow, even though the street behind us buzzed with kids shouting and laughing. I reached for the doorbell, then froze. The curtain in the front window shifted. Not much, just the faintest tug, like someone inside had been watching and let it fall too late. "Did you see that?" I whispered. "See what?" Sarah asked, but my voice must have shaken, because all of them turned toward the window. Nothing. Curtain still. I forced a laugh and pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed inside, loud and hollow. We waited. No footsteps, no voices, just the porch light buzzing faintly above us. Daniel rang again, longer this time. Still nothing. "Maybe they don't want to answer," Emily said nervously. "Let's just go." But I couldn't stop staring at the window, because I knew what I'd seen. The curtain had moved. Someone had been there, watching. And even now, as we stood in silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were still on us. "Yeah," I muttered finally. "Let's go." We hurried back down the steps, laughter from the next house spilling towards us like a lifeline. But when we reached the sidewalk, I glanced back. The curtain shifted again. This time it didn't fall back into place. It stayed open. Just a sliver, like someone wanted me to know they were there. We never went back to that house. Not that night, not any Halloween after. But here's the thing that keeps me awake sometimes. When we came home and spread out our candy later, I found something I didn't remember getting. A single wrap piece of hard candy. No brand, no label. Just plain wrap twisted at the ends. I swear I never put it in my bag. And I've never been able to explain how in the world it got there. We first noticed the kid near Oakwood Court, a dead-end street with only 6 houses. Each one had gone all out. Fog machines, glowing pumpkins, plastic gravestones littering the yards. It was one of our favorite stops. But as we headed up the street, we realized there was someone walking behind us. A small kid, maybe 7 or 8, in a faded clown costume, the kind with baggy striped pants and a ruffled collar, like something out of an old movie. Their mask was one of those cheap plastic ones, the kind that ties with elastic at the back. None of us had seen them join us. 1 minute, it was just the 4 of us. The next, they were there, silent, keeping pace. Hey, Jason said, glancing back. "Who's your group?" The kid didn't answer, just shrugged and kept walking, their plastic mask reflecting the orange glow of the streetlights. At first we thought nothing of it. Sometimes little kids wandered off and stuck with older ones until their parents caught up. So we went up to the next house. The kid followed. When we rang the bell, the homeowner looked at our costumes and dropped candy into our bags. Then without hesitation, she drops them into the kids with the clown costume too. Except he didn't have a bag. She just mimicked the motion, like she was holding one. The homeowner didn't even notice. She just smiled, waved us off, and shut the door. My stomach twisted. "Okay," Lily muttered once we were walking again. "Where are your parents?" The kids stopped walking for a second, turned their mask toward her and gave another shrug, then kept going. We tried to ignore it, but the farther we went, the worse it felt. The kid never talked, never laughed, never asked for candy. Just walked with us, steps perfectly in sync, plastic mask gleaming in the streetlights. At one point, Ben whispered to me, "Did you notice their shoes?" I looked down. The clown kid wasn't wearing any. Bare feet, pale. I felt my throat go dry. We decided to cut through the park and get back toward our street. The park was crowded with kids, parents, teens messing around by the swings. We figured once we got into the crowd, the clown kid would wander off, maybe spot their real group, but they stayed with us. Even in the crowd, they never strayed more than a foot behind. We tried to lose them speeding up, weaving between people, but every time we looked back, they were still there, silent, shrugging whenever we asked anything. By the time we reached our block, Jason snapped, "Look, kids, seriously, who are you? Where's your house?" The clown tilted their head at him slowly, then raised one hand and pointed down the street. But when we all turned to look, there was nothing, just dark houses with their porch lights off. When we turned back, the clown was gone. No footsteps, no sound of running. Just gone. We searched up and down, checked behind hedges, even called out. Nothing. Finally, we gave up and went home and tried to shake it off. But later, when I dumped out my candy bag, something slid onto the floor that I know I didn't pick up that night. A cheap plastic clown mask. The elastic strap was broken. I never went trick-or-treating again, and every Halloween since, I kept expecting to see that little clown at the edge of the crowd, bare feet on the pavement, silent, waiting to join me yet again. I was 13 the Halloween it happened. Old enough to think I was too cool for costumes, but still greedy enough to want as much candy as I could haul home. That night it was me, my best friend Tyler, his cousin Mia, and our neighbor Josh. We'd been out for almost 2 hours, our bags heavy, our feet sore, our breath fogging in the crisp October air. The streets around our neighborhood were still buzzing with kids, costumes flashing in porch lights, laughter carrying across yards, the faint bass of a Halloween playlist thumping from somewhere down the block. It was safe. It was normal. Until we hit the end of Willow Street. That's where the houses stopped and the wooded path began. The path wasn't long, just a half-mile trail that cut between Willow and the next neighborhood over. But at night, it always looked darker than it should. Most kids avoided it on Halloween. We were debating whether to head home when Josh suddenly pointed. "Hey, look!" On the sidewalk right at the trailhead lay a single fun-sized bar, and a few feet beyond that more. It wasn't a spill, it was a trail, a piece every few feet, leading straight into the trees. "Looks like some kid's bag ripped," Tyler said, already stepping forward. His grin was wide and greedy. "Free candy, dudes." Mia stayed back. "No, that's not how bags rip. When they rip, everything dumps out in a pile. This looks like..." She trailed off, frowning. "Like someone put it there." They made me uneasy, though I didn't want to admit it. The candy was just sitting there, glowing like bait under the yellow streetlight. "Maybe a little kid just didn't notice," Josh said, but his voice wasn't convincing either. Still, Tyler picked up the Snickers lying inside the path and stuffed it into his bag. "You guys are just paranoid." We followed. The deeper we went, the darker it got. The neighborhood noise faded until it was just our sneakers crunching leaves and our candy bags rustling at our sides. The air smelled damp, earthy, like the woods were holding its breath. Every 20 or 30 feet, another piece of candy. After about 5 minutes, Mia whispered, "Do you guys hear that?" We stopped. The woods were silent. Not a single cricket, not a single leaf moving in the breeze. "I don't hear anything," Tyler said. "Exactly," she snapped. "That's the problem." That's when I noticed the ground. At first, it was just scuffed leaves, like someone had been dragging a bag along the path, but the farther we went, the clearer it became. The grooves in the dirt uneven, like something heavy had been pulled through. Guys," I whispered. "Look." The drag marks ran alongside the candy trail. Josh bent down, shining his phone flashlight over them. The beam caught on broken twigs, churned up earth, and something else. A faint smear, dark and dried, along one of the grooves. We all stared. None of us said what we were thinking. Another 10 yards and the trail ended. The last piece of candy, a crushed lollipop, lay beside a torn pillowcase, half buried in the leaves. Candy wrappers spilled from it like guts. The fabric was shredded down the middle, as if ripped open by force. And next to it the drag marks deepened, gouging into the soil before veering off into the trees. Mia grabbed my arm. "Nope, no way, we're leaving." Her voice trembling now, and I didn't blame her. My own legs felt shaky, like they didn't want to move. Tyler finally lost his bravado. His face had gone pale. "Yeah, forget this. We're going back." And we did. I don't know how long we ran. Branches slapped our faces, our bags banged against our legs, and the only sound was our ragged breathing and the leaves crunching like bones underfoot. None of us dared look back. When the glow of Willow Street's lamps finally appeared through the trees, I thought I'd cry from relief. We burst out of the woods, nearly colliding with a group of younger kids just heading up the sidewalk. But when I looked back, the trail was gone. No wrappers, and the torn pillowcase we'd seen in the leaves vanished, like it had never been there. We We tried to tell ourselves we imagined it, that we got spooked, but I couldn't shake the memory of those gouges in the dirt, those drag marks leading deeper into the trees. And sometimes when I walk past the trailhead even now, I swear I see something in the shadows, like a pale hand just barely visible, reaching out to drop another piece of candy on the ground, waiting for someone else to follow. I was 12 the year it happened, just on the edge of that weird stage where you're not quite a little kid anymore, but not old enough to be trusted like a teenager. It was the first Halloween my parents let me go trick-or-treating without them. I'd been begging for years, swearing up and down I could handle it, and finally they caved, as long as I stuck with my friends and stayed in our neighborhood. That night, it was me, my best friend Kyle, his little sister Emma, and our buddy Ryan. Kyle was dressed as a zombie football player, pads, a torn-up jersey, and fake blood smeared down his face. Emma was a witch, though her pointy hat kept sliding down over her eyes. Ryan went as a vampire, cape and all, but his plastic fangs were already shoved in his pocket because they made him drool. I threw together a last-minute skeleton costume, black sweats with white bones painted on, and a cheap glow-in-the-dark mask that smelled like plastic and sweat. The air was cold, but not freezing. The kind of October night where your breath came out and in faint clouds. The neighborhood was alive with kids darting from house to house, costumes flashing under porch lights, the sound of laughter and leaves crunching under sneakers. Pumpkins glowed on nearly every step, their carved faces flickering with candlelight, and the smell of distant bonfires carried on the breeze. It felt safe, ordinary, like every other Halloween we'd ever known, until the van. We were on the third block when I noticed it. We just hit a house with this elaborate, haunted yard setup, fog machine, fake gravestones, a skeleton that popped out of a coffin when you stepped on a mat. Emma screamed so loud, it made the dad in charge laugh, and even though we teased her, I jumped too. When we turned back toward the street, I saw it parked a little ways down, a white van, old, rusted around the wheel wells. One of the side panels was dented in, and I swear the back bumper was hanging a little loose. Nothing weird about a car on the street, right? Except the headlights weren't on, and it was moving slow. Too slow. Like someone rolling forward just enough to keep pace with us. Probably a parent, Ryan said when I mentioned it. He always tried to act like the tough one. They're just keeping an eye on their kids. That made sense, so I pushed it out of my head. But a few houses later, I checked again. The van had moved closer. Not right on top of us, but enough that I could see into the windshield. The glass was too dark to make out a face. He walked faster. So did the van. "Hey," Kyle muttered, tugging my sleeve as we left another porch. "Look at the back. No license plate." I turned around and looked. My stomach dropped. He was right. The spot where the plate should have been was just a rectangle, and rust, chipped paint. No numbers, no state, nothing. That's when Emma noticed too. She clutched her candy bucket with both hands, her witch hat sliding over her eyes. "Why is he following us?" she asked, voice small. Ryan shrugged again, but his voice cracked when he answered. "Maybe he just lives around here." But the van didn't pull into a driveway, didn't pass us, didn't turn a corner. It just crawled along behind us, engine rumbling low, headlights off, like it was content to sit in the dark and wait. By the 6th block, none of us were laughing anymore. We'd stopped running up to porches and yelling trick or treat. Instead, we moved quick and quiet, eyes flicking back toward the street after every house. At one place, I lingered on the porch, pretending to tie my shoe just so I could watch. Sure enough, the van rolled forward when the rest of the group walked, then stopped dead when they did. It was deliberate. That's when I really felt it, the heavy, awful realization that whoever was inside wasn't some parent or neighbor. They were watching us, following us. "Let's get over to Maple," Kyle whispered. "See if he keeps up." So we did. We darted across a lawn, cutting between houses to the next blocks over. For 1 second, I thought maybe we'd lost it. The street was crowded with other kids, parents, chatting at the ends of driveways, porch lights glowing. I let myself breathe. Then I heard it. The low rumble of an engine turning the corner. The van rolled up Maple Street. Same speed, same distance. That's when panic really set in. "What do we do?" Emma asked, gripping Kyle's arm so tight her knuckles went white. "We just go home," Kyle muttered. His voice was trembling. "We're only a couple blocks away." but those couple blocks felt endless. Every house we passed, I kept hoping someone else would notice. Some adult would step into the street and yell, "Hey, what are you doing?" But nobody did. Parents were too busy herding toddlers and chatting. The other kids didn't care. It was just us. I thought about running up to someone and telling them, but the words stuck in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if it really was nothing and we just looked stupid? The van followed us past the gas station on the corner, past the row of houses with inflatable ghosts on the lawns, past the block with the dead tree that creaked in the wind. Every time I looked back, it was still there. By the time we reached the park, I was shaking. The park was mostly dark, just a few dim lamps by the basketball courts, but it cut straight to our street. A car couldn't follow us through there. "Come on," I said, already heading for the grass. "It's quicker." The others hesitated half a second, then followed. We crunched over leaves, weaving between trees, our bags of candy bouncing against our legs. I couldn't help it. I looked back one last time. The van had pulled up to the curb and stopped. The engine revved once, then cut off. For a split second, the headlights flicked on, washing the street in harsh light, then clicked off again. Like he wanted us to know he was still there, watching and waiting. That's all I needed. I ran, we all did. We sprinted through the park, lungs burning, legs aching. Candy spilled out of Emma's bucket, but she didn't stop to grab it. I didn't stop either. I just ran until the familiar shape of my street came into view. We burst out of the park and didn't stop until we reached Kyle's front door. We slammed it shut, locked it, and all four of us collapsed in the hallway, gasping for air, sweat soaking through our costumes. When I finally worked up the courage to look back out the window, the street was empty. The van was gone. Just like that. None of us said a word about it that night. Not to Kyle's parents, not to mine, not to anyone. We were too scared they wouldn't believe us. Or worse, they never let us go trick-or-treating alone again. But I'll tell you this. Every Halloween since, I don't look at costumes first. I look at the cars. I check the shadows between the houses. I listen for the sound of an engine idling too long. Because whoever was in that van wasn't out for candy. And sometimes, late at night, I still wonder what would have happened if we hadn't cut through the park.